Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Welcome to MiraCosta College. Hope you're enjoying your lunch. My name is Jim Julius. I'm Faculty Director of Online Education here at MiraCosta, and I just want to provide a couple words of introduction to our event today and to our keynote speaker. So MiraCosta College has a long history of concern and action with regard to textbook affordability. For years, our Textbook Affordability Committee has sought creative solutions to provide students with access to course materials at low or no cost. And over the last several years, many faculty have individually taken the initiative to explore or even create open educational resources. Those are materials that are licensed for educators and students to use, adapt, and share at no cost. In 2016, MiraCosta received 3 grants from the state of California that enabled many more faculty to begin using OER and to develop zero textbook cost or ZTC programs, specifically in child development and in sociology. Just one of those grants we tracked very closely in the 2016-17 year and saw that enabled cost savings of over $240,000 to students in those classes. Research also increasingly is showing that there are multiple positive effects on student achievement coming out of the use of OER, coming out of those kinds of cost savings. There's also a new state law in California, SB 1359, that requires that colleges denote on their class schedule the zero textbook cost classes, and we're in full compliance with that. And at last count, 145 of our spring classes have zero textbook cost for our students. I think that's pretty close to 10% of our class schedule, so that is quite impressive. With all this foundational work here, it's definitely the right time to celebrate and extend our efforts. Thus, this event today, and also our special privilege to welcome Nicole Finkbeiner to help us with this. Nicole Finkbeiner is the Associate Director of Institutional Relations for OpenStax, which is the premier developer and facilitator of high-quality OER texts. She provides advice and support for institutions implementing OER on their campuses, and I've found her insightful and inspiring when I've had the privilege of hearing her speak at OER conferences and events. She worked in administration at community colleges prior to joining OpenStax. And when not promoting OER, Nicole works on civil rights issues, hits the gym, and writes a marketing blog. So please help me welcome Nicole Finkbeiner.
Hello. Thank you all for having me here. Thanks to Jim for bringing me out here. Oceanside is lovely. Oh my gosh. So I did a gray whale tour yesterday and actually saw some gray whales, so that was lovely. On the downside, my fiance is a former Marine, and I was looking forward to a break from hearing about the Marine Corps and figured out that Oceanside is a really bad place for that. You guys got a lot of barbershop and military supply places around here. So I wanted to start by telling my story and how I got involved in this, and it actually starts at a very young age for me. My mother worked at a community college starting at the time that she was pregnant for me, and she worked in the evenings in the library. And so what better place to go do your homework as a kid than go to the library with your mom in the evenings? And so I would go, and it was back when we had like legitimate 15-minute breaks, remember those? And oftentimes, she would take her students, her work-study students, down to the bookstore, and I would tag along. And my mom was constantly buying textbooks. And sometimes the students were handing her money, and sometimes they weren't. But she was continually buying textbooks. And for the longest time, I didn't understand what was going on. But now I understand very clearly what was going on. Is that my mother was using her employee discount at the bookstore to purchase books for students, and a lot of times she was using her own money to buy her students' textbooks to keep them in school. So this is something that I have seen impact students and impact my own family our entire lives. She was really encouraged and adamant about getting students immediate access to their resources so that they could walk into those classrooms and be successful. Rice University began working in open educational resources in 1999, so we've been at it for about 19 years now. And we started as the Connections Project, and we started as an open educational resource library and repository. So this is where any faculty member could upload and share resources with one another around any subject they wanted. And this still exists today. We have over 40,000 pieces of content in the repository. And we thought, this is great. No one should ever have to buy a textbook again. Students have access to all these learning resources. We have solved the problem. Well, that didn't happen. And what we thought would happen is that faculty would pick those up and they'd be used across the country and maybe even across the world. And what was happening is one particular faculty member who uploaded the resources would go ahead and use those, and maybe one or two other faculty, but we weren't seeing it across scale like we were hoping for. So we had to go back and really do an assessment of why is that? What's going wrong in our goal of really reducing costs for students and increasing access and all of that? And so we did a lot of focus groups, we went to a lot of campus visits, did a lot of this stuff. And so I'm originally from Michigan, and I moved to the South about 6 years ago. And I've become familiar with a lot of Southern phrases, my favorite being hot mess. I just love it, it describes so much. And what they were basically telling us is, this is a hot mess. There's modules, there's all this resources out there, but we have no idea what the quality is. We have to build from the ground up and kind of bring all these resources together to create a complete resource. It's just not really meeting our needs, especially as our time keeps getting stretched and stretched and stretched more. And so what we learned from that process was a couple of things. Number one, faculty needed something that was the same quality that they were currently getting from a publisher, and they needed something that was complete, met that standard scope and sequence. So instead of building from the ground up, they wanted something that was fairly complete that they then could modify or change or adapt or use however they see fit. So more of an adapt versus build from the ground up. You also wanted something that was expert written, but not only expert written, but peer reviewed. And that was a big thing for us to learn when we went out and asked faculty, okay, what do you need? And they said, we need something high quality. And we're like, define that for us. What does it mean to be high quality? And one of the big things that came out of that was a peer review process of all the resources we were putting out. So now if you see something under the OpenStax name, we have approximately 50 peer reviewers reviewing that content from community colleges, four-year universities, as well as private schools. And then it needed to go through that extensive editorial process, as well as we needed to have a plan for regular errata and industry updates to the content, because it's one thing to publish an OER, it's another thing to keep it up to date and ensure that it's getting those regular errata updates as well as the content updates. The next thing we learned is that this is rather expensive to do because we pay all the faculty involved, and of course we hire our editors, we have to create art usually from scratch. So we typically spend about $500,000 to $2 million per book that we publish. So lots of money. And so we need foundation support for that. So we are a nonprofit at OpenStax at Rice University, and the foundations that you see on the screen, some notable ones including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, they provide that startup funding to be able to publish these books. So they really support us in that way. And then we learned that we really needed to look at scale and focus on scale. So whenever I'm working with a college or a university on their open educational resource initiative, the first thing I ask you to consider is how many students are going to be impacted by this. How many students at your institution will be impacted by this? What is the likelihood that it will be picked up by other colleges and universities so that their students can be impacted? Because the last thing that we want is to recreate the will at each institution. So one of the ways that we do this is the list of current OpenStax titles that we have available. And when we're looking at what titles are we going to develop, one of the questions that we ask is, how many students will be impacted by this? So for example, take psychology and US history. Every year, 1 million students in the United States take those courses. Each of those courses, 1 million students per year. So those are some big numbers that we want to be able to impact. One of the other criteria that we choose to decide which textbooks we're going to do is how expensive are the textbooks currently in the market? So there are some high enrollment courses that the average textbook cost is, like $40. That's not a huge deal. But it is a huge deal that we see microbiology textbooks that are over $400, that we see a statistics book that's over $300. For our business faculty, I find it ironic, but economics is one of the most expensive textbooks you can buy. Makes no sense. On an institutional level, there's other ways of looking at this. So one of the institutions I work with heavily is Affordable Learning Georgia, which is the University System of Georgia's OER initiative. And what they've done is they've said, okay, what are our top 100 most enrolled courses across the entire system? And how can we offer grants and training and encouragement to try to increase the use of OER in those courses? Because those are the ones where almost every single student passes through these courses. The next thing we learned is that you really need to focus on the formats and the access that students use. So one of the big things that we focus on at Rice University is that there should be no barriers to the students in accessing their content. There's no login. The students immediately click on the content and they have access to it. We also believe that students should never lose access to their content. So one of the things I tell you about using an OpenStax book or any OER is, if there's a PDF, encourage your students to go ahead and download that PDF. Because once they have it saved to their computer, I joke as long as they can remember where they saved it, they will have that content for the rest of their lives. So as they go on, they will be able to reference back that content. The next thing we learned is that students like to access content in a variety of ways depending on what device they have in front of them. So it's not uncommon for me to come to a campus like this and have a student say, I have the print copy, I use that at home, and then when I'm in class with my laptop, I'll use the PDF, and when I get on the bus to go home, I use my cell phone to study. And they're constantly juggling these different things, and it's great that they're doing that. But we wanted to make sure it's in the different formats that students use. So the most popular ones for us, we have a free online version, we have a free PDF, and believe it or not, we have a free Kindle version that Amazon helped us develop. So exciting about that. We also have an iBook version. That one we did have to pay for to develop, so we charged $6.99 to help us cover our costs. I know I visited a lot of your departments this morning, and I heard the concern about print copies, and that's a very real concern, particularly when we're working at community colleges, because we do have a lot of non-traditional students who do prefer those print copies. So we weren't planning to get into the printing business, but we have decided to go ahead and do that. And we have a lovely rack that your library created over here of some print copies of OER that you can take a look at later. What OpenStax did is that we went out, we were able to negotiate with print providers to print copies of our books, but we sell them essentially at our cost. So it all depends on the thickness of the book. Our really thin Intro to Sociology book is $29. Our most expensive book is our Astronomy. It's a beast, and it's $65. And students, only 10% of students across the country buy those, but they're available. And they're available through your college bookstore, which is important because if students have some sort of Pell funding or scholarships or something, that's available. But again, with OER, students don't have to pay for anything. They can just use the free online versions, and most of them do, and that's absolutely okay. And then comes the question of homework, courseware, clicker, all those technology things that you need around your course, especially if you're in one that has high, homework or courseware or needs like that as well. And at the same time, we heard overwhelmingly from faculty, how do I know you're going to be around in 5 years? Which I can understand, because let me tell you, I asked that question during my interview when I interviewed at Stax a couple of years ago too, right? Because I wanted a job. We need to figure out a way to be sustainable, not profitable, sustainable. Again, we are a nonprofit, but we needed to find a way to make sure that we were able to sustain and revise the textbooks when pedagogically necessary to do so. At the same time, our faculty advisory board was telling us, we really want to keep the homework systems we do and see if you can partner with them versus creating your own. So what we did is we went out and we partnered with as many homework, courseware, clicker, you name it, technology partners as we possibly can, and said, why don't you offer your services around the book for a very low cost, which we define as less than $40. So now the student is not only getting the book for free, but they're also paying significantly less for that homework. Now, you don't have to use any of these, but they're available. But the other nice thing that we did is we believe in competition. We believe in an open market and how that controls pricing and quality. So what we did is we said, okay, if you want to partner with us in math, that's great. But you are going to be one of 12 partners in math, because we want faculty to choose whatever they think is going to work best for them and their students, not what we choose. And that'll keep your prices low. So you can choose any of these or none of these with the book, but they're available. And part of that student fee, if you do choose to use them, comes back to us as a mission support fee. That's the way we sustain our nonprofit. We are sustainable for the college books. And then you think about all those additional things that faculty members need around a book in terms of the homework and the labs, but also things like basic PowerPoint slides, pronunciation guides, solution manuals, test banks, things like that. And so through our grant funding and through our nonprofit donations, we are able to offer some very basic ancillaries. And I do emphasize they're basic. However, they're available, and it can be helpful, particularly if you have a new faculty member starting out or an adjunct that finds out a couple weeks before the semester that they're going to teach a class. These can be helpful places to start. We've also had something really interesting happen in about the last year and a half, where faculty started emailing me and emailing my colleagues and saying, it's great that you're able to offer some basic ancillaries, but I have created additional content around the book. I've created key terms guides. I've created test banks. I've created quizzes. I've created worksheets, and I would like to donate those back to the open community. And so we also have on each book webpage a community resources tab where you can see all those resources that have been donated back to us by other faculty. One of the most exciting things for us is that here in California, the Open Education Initiative created Canvas course shells around all the OpenStax content. So those are available in Canvas Commons for you to go ahead and use as well. And that's really the power of OER. The free is definitely a huge benefit, but when you think about the fact that you are not restricted by copyright and that you can go out and take this content and do whatever you need to do with it without having to worry about copyright restrictions, that's when it really opens up for these groups and organizations as well as you to teach the courses and do what you would like to do with the content. So this is always the big question of how does this help students learn? Well, beyond removing all the cost barriers and having that immediate access, which is a big part, and we're having a session later that Tao and I are leading on student equity and social justice in OER, so I encourage you to come to that. In terms of efficacy research, we are seeing that efficacy research at the empirical level is being done around OER. We do see that students take more credits, not only in the semester that they use OER, but in following semesters as well, presumably because they can afford to do so. And then we are seeing that students are less likely to withdraw from a course that uses an OER because they don't have that cost barrier. In terms of student success, there have been 11 peer-reviewed studies so far of around 49,000 students, and 93% of the students did as well or better using an OER. Now, I consider as well still a win, because if students aren't paying $350 for the book and they are doing as well in the class, that's still a win, right? So snarky Nicole likes to come out sometimes, and whenever I get asked this, in faculty meetings and departments, I say, yeah, absolutely, we can show this. Have you ever asked a publisher that question? All right. And it's working. So our goal was to create resources that would really impact not just students at Rice, not just students in Texas, but across the country and across the world. OpenStax is being used by 1.8 million students this year. We are in 4,900 different colleges and universities, and I put just a smattering of them up here to really just show you the breadth of it and the different types of colleges and universities, obviously heavily used here in California as well. And then this year we were really excited to find out that we are in 16% of introductory courses in the United States, per the Babson College Survey. Now, to give you a comparison, the largest publishers also have this level of market share. So now we are at the same amount of market share as the commercial publishers with use of OER in these introductory courses. So that's huge. That just happened this year. And so far, we have saved students, by our estimates, $332 million. We're very excited about that. Again, I really want to emphasize, though, beyond the cost savings, the level of freedom that you get when you use a resource that's an open educational resource. I know that we think of open educational resources free, and yeah, that's a great part of it, but really it's about the open licensing. The fact that you have the right to do whatever you want with the content is really huge for both you and your students. So on the student side, students being able to access the content whenever, wherever, and however they learn. You think about the different formats of the different devices, the ability to share it on social networks and course wikis and all of that fun stuff. Having not only instant access, but permanent access. And I'll go into that in a little bit in just a minute. And then being able to take the content and really use it in a way that makes sense to them. Use it in class assignments. If you come to the session later, I have a wonderful testimonial from a UTSA student talking about how he takes this content and develops his own study guides and stuff because he has a huge test anxiety issue and a learning disability. So being able to do that and not being bound by that copyright restriction is huge. So why do I think it's so important that students have access to the core content once the course is over? There are a lot of reasons that your students should have this. Number one, you think about courses that span multiple semesters, and you think about, with those access codes, that students continually have to rebuy that content every time they get a new access code for a new semester. And sometimes even in the semester. Please be careful with those access codes. I have been on campuses where it's a 16-week course and the access code is for 12 weeks. So please just double check those. But think about your multiple semesters. You think about retaking a course. One of the big things that's been really interesting to us at OpenStax is how much our books are used as a reference for advanced courses. We had a major university adoption come in the other day that was about 1,000 students a year, and it was for our introductory statistics book. And we happened to catch the email signature of the professor, and she was a professor of psychology. And I'm like, did she click on the wrong book when she was telling us what's going on here? And so we reached out to her and we said, did you mean to say that you're using the psychology book? And she said, no, I teach a lot of advanced research methods courses at my university, and I found that the students just need a brush up on their basic statistics, and all of them have either sold their content back or their access codes are gone. So it was a choice of making them rebuy that content or just going ahead and using the OpenStax book. So I'm using that to help them with that. Then you think of the GMAT, GRE, MCAT, CRE, all these different exams that we all have to take. I'm not quite sure why I needed to relearn the circumference of a circle for a master's degree in communication and advertising, but I did. And admittedly, this was pre-OER, and so guess what? I bought that content again. Students shouldn't have to do that anymore. And then I had some fun, and I was talking with our Rice University library, and I was like, how many of us actually end up in the subject area that we go to college for? And we had some fun looking it up, and it's a very low percentage of us that actually end up in the career that we went to school for. So yes, it's very possible that that physics major might need that psychology book at some point in their lives. You just never know. And then you think about just even being an informed citizen, and in your everyday life. You know, I'm personally going back through our U.S. history book right now because I feel like as an informed citizen, I need to brush up on that. So there's a lot of reasons to have access to this content. On the faculty side, it really frees up a lot for you to use something that isn't bound by these copyright restrictions. Number one of the biggest benefits I hear is that faculty are like, on day one, I can start moving forward with my learning objectives. There is no reason for those students not to have access to it. Being able to choose the technology partners or choose none of them. Having that choice be yours and not being locked into a particular platform or system. Being able to edit and adapt the content as you see fit, as needed as your course is huge. Having ownership of that content and only moving to a new edition if you absolutely want to. Because you can always maintain and retain that old edition and have your students use that. But I wanted to give you some very specific examples. The Orange Book is our general chemistry book that we published. And the University of Connecticut came to us and said, you know, this is a really great book, but we teach atoms first at UConn, and so we need to edit and modify the book. But Nicole, we've heard your lectures about needing to get it peer-reviewed and not having it just impact your particular university. And so we want to get this peer-reviewed, and we want to put it out in the OpenStax library so other colleges and universities will use this book. And we said, that's great, that costs money, we're gonna have to go find some grant funding for that. And they're like, well, you know, and they said, well, how much would it cost? And we told them, and then we go away and we're trying to find grant funding, pitching it to our different funders. And then the University of Connecticut called us back and said, congratulations, our undergraduate student government association is giving you and us a grant to edit, modify, and peer review this book so that we can donate it back to the library. So now we have a general chemistry book and an Atoms First chemistry book as well. So that's very exciting. Now, as I mentioned before, we're starting to see these communities pop up. This is OER Commons. They've developed a faculty community around every single one of our textbooks where faculty can upload and share teaching and learning resources and worksheets and anything else that they have developed around the content. They're sharing it back with one another and allowing other faculty to use those resources to be able to work on their courses. A school in Mexico reached out to us, a medical school, and said, your books are great, but they're in English. Kind of a problem for our students. May we translate them? And we said, sure, under the attribution license, you don't even need to ask our permission. We'd love to hear about it when you're done, but absolutely. So this is our entire Concepts of Biology book translated into Spanish and put back in a library so that other faculty and students can use it as well. And then you think about YouTube videos and flipped classrooms and all these kind of public forums where faculty are sharing resources, showing resources, things like that. This is just a very simple physics reading guide that a faculty member put up on YouTube. They walk their students through how to read the physics book and commentary and such. So let's be clear. If this were copyrighted publisher content, making a YouTube video like this is illegal. But with OpenStax content, because you're using openly licensed resources, you absolutely have the right to do this. And we encourage it, absolutely. So with that, I would say prices are a big deal, and we most certainly need to consider that, and that's one of the benefits of open educational resources. But it's really about the accessibility for you and your students to be able to take this content and make it work for you and really work towards student success. So thank you so much. Okay, we have a couple minutes for questions. Who wants to be first? Yeah. Oh, I gotta repeat the questions. Do we have anything for introductory art or art history classes? Currently, we do not. Those two have particularly been a challenge to develop, and the reason is that for all of our books, everything that goes into it must be open source. And so when you get into particularly art and contemporary art and such, we're really struggling to figure out a way to develop a book that includes copyrighted content, you know, and how to do that. But you all have a lovely website here. It's maricosta.edu/OER, where Jim has actually went through and identified OER for all the course subject areas that are available. So he has that, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you about that too. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right, computers, networking, technology. There is a little bit out there as well on that website, I think. That's another one that's hard because it continually gets updated. But if you go to cnx.org, it's catnancyxylophone.org. There's some machine learning and computer science books on there, as well as the maricosta.edu/OER has a listing of those as well. So those are available. Yeah. Okay, so the question is, do we have a way to control monetize external people trying to monetize the content? Is that, yeah, okay. Not necessarily. There is a license that's a Creative Commons by non-commercial license that some OER providers use, which means that it cannot be commercialized. But that again locks down the content a little bit more. What we have chosen to do is to, all of our books except calculus, that one is non-commercial because of it, and to deal with the author, but we keep them open under just the attribution. But we're sneaky about this. So our attribution that we require on our books is that on the bottom of every single electronic page or every single print page, it says, this book is available completely free at, and then gives our website. So this has happened where people have taken our books and printed them and then tried to sell them on Amazon, like fake print copies, not like the nice ones we have. And you know, luckily Amazon does that preview, and they'll be up about a week and the students will start writing in the reviews, hey, if you actually look at this, it's available completely free at this website. Please don't buy this, you know. So we have some catches in that way. The other thing that we have is that while the content is openly licensed, the OpenStax brand is a trademark. It's a registered trademark. So we do have some legal ways if they try to use that logo. So that's one way to double check and make sure it's actually our content, is to look for that logo, because that is a trademark. And then what was your second question? So the question is if you can't switch over to all OER, do the publishers push back and try to get you on those the courses that there isn't OER available? I have not seen that. I'd be interested if you've ever heard that, but I have not seen that. I have seen where it's used as a price negotiation tool by faculty who will say, there's a great YouTube video somewhere of Rajiv Jahani from Kwantlen Polytechnic up in Canada, where the publisher came in and he's like, oh, I think I'm going to use an OER, and the publisher dropped the price to half the price. And then he was like, you know what, that just makes me even more mad. You should have done that in the beginning. But I haven't seen that, but I am seeing, and the nice thing about, we do feel, especially right now, there isn't enough OER to cover every subject. And so we are seeing where publishers are starting to drop their prices due to OER, which is good. And I think they still have a place to play in those more senior level courses. But I think you will see where faculty are starting to take the core OER, like those developed by OpenStax, and adapting them and making them for more senior level courses, and that's where the threat's going to be. As well as we're going to continue to push out more books as well to cover more subject areas and deeper subject areas as well, but I haven't seen that yet. He's standing up. I think that means we're done.